2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to the NESN Soccer Show. Big day of the Champions League finally back in action after what felt like a longer layoff than USA's absence from the World Cup. But a couple of really big matches to get us going. Juventus-Tottenham right off the bat. We'll jump right into it. We're going to get to all four of the matches that have taken place. But Juventus-Tottenham was really kind of thrilling. Juventus jumps out to a 2-0 lead. Results in a 2-2 tie. I think that it was kind of a huge letdown for Juventus. Or not just, but to be in the position that they were, up 2-0, in kind of catching everybody off guard of how well Tottenham played in the knockout rounds and how well they've been playing. But like to be up 2-0, you think, okay, Juventus is going to park the bus. They're going to come out of here with at least a win, and certainly are in good position heading back to England for the second leg. And all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but over the course of the next 75 minutes after going up 2-0, it all kind of slowly but surely crumbles.
Yeah.
For me, watching the game, Higuain scores the first goal, and it was kind of like, I don't want to say miraculous. It's not like the greatest goal we've ever seen.
No,
but
it was pretty damn good, though.
Yeah, so like it was the kind of goal where most of the time when any player tries that, it's, wide of the net. It's,
Right.
it's in the fifth row.
Or they just whiff entirely.
Right, and he converts it. And then they get a PK call. And so I don't want to say it's a fluke because Juventus is a great team, but, they were up 2-0 in a game that Tottenham really was controlling.
Well, when they went up 2-0, Tottenham wasn't in control. I mean, the first goal was, 2 minutes into the game or 3 minutes?
Yeah.
It was very, very early in the game. And then I forget what happened for the second goal, but, it took Tottenham a while to get going into the game. But once they got going,
Yeah.
it looked like they were unstoppable.
Yeah, and so
Except for the penalty that Higuain ended up missing.
Right. So
That was probably the turning point, maybe in the entire series, but certainly in the game. That gave Tottenham a little bit more life than they would have otherwise had, even though they had scored by then.
Right. When you kind of like break it down, I agree with you that I shouldn't have said that Tottenham was in control the whole game because they weren't.
Right.
And I would say in the second half they were probably much more in control, which kind of relates back to that goal or the missed PK. But the first half, Harry Kane's goal came on sort of a lapse of defense by Juventus. I feel like it kind of opened the door for Tottenham to, kind of be like, hey, being down 2-0 is no big deal. And we got Harry Kane, and here we come. But yeah, Higuain, it's like even when he does perform in the big stage, he doesn't. It's just brutal.
And he came out on Instagram afterwards and, he had words for his critics.
Ugh.
I forget what he said, but basically it was, I'm tired of being criticized and, by people who
don't know
can't do what I do.
Right. Well, the thing is, I never like when the same player takes a PK twice in one game, unless they're one of the absolute greatest. Because it's there's just, I feel like there's like a psychological thing. It's like what you're gonna do when you take a PK as a player, and then when you go up the second time, you're just psyching yourself out, thinking I can't do the same thing I did before. But it's like, why not? And then he tries to do something else, and then it's off the crossbar.
Well, if the coach designates you as the penalty taker, then that's it. That's all you can do. You get up there.
As coach, you can
get up to the
designate
spot.
If we have a second PK, it's going to be this guy. No?
Yeah, you can, but
Yeah.
moving on.
Well, okay, on the second goal, it was a set piece for Tottenham. Very low and hard. But it seemed like Buffon could have had a save. He kind of like jumped left. The ball went to his right. The wall was blocking what was to his left.
Yeah.
And it seemed like he didn't need to go that direction, or that if the ball had gone that direction, the wall would have blocked it. So it's kind of like, man, did Buffon let them down? I don't know.
You're saying Buffon made a mistake on the goal.
Yeah. He makes mistakes.
Yeah.
It happens.
Nobody's perfect. He's about as close as it comes, but no. I think he was probably, Buffon's 40, 41 years old now, and maybe he's trying to cheat to one side just to make up for a little bit of lack of spring that he has at this point in his career, and it seemed like he burned him on that one.
Okay, so despite the sort of storming comeback, it's Juventus. They can go to Tottenham and they can win. They can go to Tottenham and tie 2-2, and then we end up in extra time, or tie 3-3 and win the match on away goals. So
they're not scoring 3 goals at Wembley. They might. I don't know.
Yeah, you never know.
I would still like Tottenham's. I would still like Juventus's chances of winning the game straight up at Wembley Stadium, because in terms of European pedigree, one is Juventus, the other is Tottenham. Yeah, they're used to it.
Backs against the wall is no big deal for Juventus.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say they're backs against the wall, because take a 1-0 win. Although I don't see them holding Tottenham goalless at Wembley.
Yeah.
I would think Tottenham will score at least 1, and Juventus needs 2.
All right.
And they're capable of doing that, because Tottenham, they didn't, defensively, they're still vulnerable.
I think we're going to see Juventus pull it out, and we're going to see a lot of sad, surprised but not surprised English faces on Tottenham fans at Wembley Stadium come, I guess that match is in a couple weeks?
Yeah, we'll get to this later, but I don't see there being 5 English teams in the quarterfinals.
Right.
Just by the law of averages.
Well, the other English teams are in good position, so if somebody's going to blow it, not blow it, but Tottenham is the team that would do it. And plus, we got Man United playing Barcelona?
Sevilla.
Who's playing Barcelona? One of them is
Chelsea. Okay.
Well, I don't think we'll end up with 5 either, I don't think Tottenham will get the job done. But it'll be some sort of heartbreaking fashion. You just don't even know. It'll be something terrible.
Yeah, but it's a positive result for Tottenham to go into Juventus and into Turin, and then leave with 2 away goals and a draw. Everything is in their favor, except for the fact of pedigree. These ties take place over 180 minutes. Tottenham was good for 90. Can they be that good or better in the next 90? I would doubt it.
Well, elsewhere in the Premier League, in Champions League, Man City steamrolled Basel 4-0. What did we learn in this game is that Man City will be in the quarterfinal, right?
Yeah, which we knew that coming in.
Yeah, they overpowered them. There's not much to say about this one. Probably expect more of the same in the second leg, especially back at Man City. And then Liverpool topped Porto 5-0. I'm not surprised Liverpool won the game, but I am surprised that they won 5-0 on the road. It was kind of like, whoa, when I saw that score. Good for them. And that brings the Premier League in the round of 16 thus far, in their 3 matches, which were all road matches, outscoring their opponents 11 goals to 2.
Yeah.
Which is pretty impressive. So Premier League kind of continuing to steamroll the competition so far. But
Man City over Basel and Liverpool over Porto, we expected this. Didn't expect Liverpool to go, 5 clear goals of. I was surprised, but I was also not. I'm surprised that they scored 5. Not surprised they won, and fully expected Liverpool to go in and win. There's a gulf in class between the English league and the Portuguese league that I think this just demonstrated. For Porto, they're top of the league in Portugal. I think they're unbeaten this season domestically, and they just were, thoroughly trashed by the 3rd or 4th best team in England.
Yeah. So Liverpool's front 3, is it the best in Europe? There's a question that's kind of floating around.
No,
I don't think so either.
They are in great form, and they are certainly one of the most dangerous. But for me, I think it's still Ronaldo, Benzema, Bale.
Right.
Now, the problem with that is Bale's fitness.
Is that,
Benzema's not scoring. Ronaldo's getting a little bit old, even though he's still lighting up the Champions League. And Bale just can't get on the field.
Right.
Bale's chronically injured. But, put those 3 up against Liverpool's front 3. Liverpool's front 3, they're having a great season. but they're still not a recognized striker. You know, Roberto Firmino is, you know, he's leading Liverpool's front three. He's leading their line, but he's not a striker. He's more of a, you know, false nine attacking midfielder. But yeah, he's got 20 goals in all competitions this season.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, they're great, but the best. No, I'm still gonna go with Real Madrid.
Okay.
Actually, Manchester City's front three is probably better as well. Leroy Sané when healthy, Raheem Sterling, and Sergio Aguero, Gabriel Jesus. I think I would take them over Liverpool. So let's put Liverpool's front three as third.
Okay.
And there's probably somebody. Oh, PSG.
Yeah.
Neymar, Cavani, Mbappe.
Not bad.
They might be the best. So Liverpool, no, not the best front three in Europe, but super impressive.
And on fire right now.
And on fire right now.
Yeah.
Devastating on their day.
Speaking of Real Madrid and PSG, they had the sort of the galactic matchup. Real Madrid at home gets the win 3-1. Pretty good result. Give up that away goal, but the big thing here is this is PSG with Neymar. PSG's first real chance to take down a giant and do what Neymar was brought there to do.
Right.
And they kind of put themselves behind the 8 ball, but definitely can go home and win 2-0 or, you know, advance still. They're not in an impossible situation. But
you know, this is first of all, the game wasn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when the draw was held and this
Right.
one came out, it was like everybody was just salivating and foaming at the mouth. I thought it was a letdown. You know, some moments of individual skill, but in terms of cohesion and, you know, the real flow to the game, there wasn't much to it. I was looking for something to write about, even if it's, be it a great goal, great highlight, or just something that really stood out from the game, and it was nothing. It seems like it was, one of the Guardian writers talked about how it was a expensively assembled mishmash, but it didn't really come together. It's like putting the best musicians from different bands into one collaboration, and you know they produce a song that's just not that good.
Right.
Yeah, that was kind of what I saw. PSG, one of their players said it's one thing to score 8 against one of the teams whose names I can't pronounce, a small French team.
Ligue 1.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of PSG not having enough big games regularly to cope with the very best in Europe.
Yeah, that's a good point. That it's not even like there's not even a psychological aspect of like, oh, we're scared to go up against a big club. It's nothing like that.
Yeah.
It's just you get into kind of this routine of blowing out really inferior opponents that just are literally at a lower skill level.
And there are really maybe 3 teams in France that can, you know, really push PSG on any given day. I'd say Lyon, Marseille, and Monaco are, you know, and I don't think any of them have beaten PSG. Actually, maybe Lyon has, but
yeah, I mean,
there's just not a lot of competition for PSG. They'll play a big
Right.
game every couple months, and when you go up against Real Madrid in the round of 16,
Right.
you know, there's still that psychological block.
So you regarded the penalty that was given that Ronaldo converted right before halftime as a questionable call.
Yeah, I mean, the defender made a mistake, and Toni Kroos went down with a breeze. You know, it didn't take much for him to go to ground, and he got the penalty. Ronaldo apparently made the ball levitate before he hit it. When he was running up to take the penalty, the ball skipped up into the air, and then he just smashed it past the goalkeeper.
Is this surprising that Ronaldo can make the ball levitate? That's not surprising.
Not surprised.
Well, then he also scored in the 83rd minute and leads the Champions League in goals, and is first player to 100 goals in Champions League history with one team. Mm-hmm. Pretty incredible for having a, quote, off year.
Yeah.
What can you speak? Why is it? Is it just, you know, him, Ronaldo biggest stage, Champions League.
Yeah, he knows when the lights are on. He knows when hundreds of millions of people are watching watching around the world. So he's one of those guys. It's like when Kobe Bryant used to play on Christmas.
Right.
You knew there was going to be a show. And yeah, this is Ronaldo. He's an absolute phenomenon. A player like him comes along once every 50 years or so, and yeah, all we can do is enjoy it. He might not have, he's not having the same impact on a week-to-week basis this season as he's had in the past, but big games, big goals. And then he came up after the game last night. He was saying, I really stepped up tonight, and patting himself on the back, as only Ronaldo can do.
Right. Go look at the statues of himself in his museum dedicated to himself.
Yeah.
What are the chances that PSG can overcome the 3-1 deficit? I think it's really something that I wouldn't be surprised to see happen if they won 2-0 at home and pushed through on aggregate goals and away goals.
Do you see PSG's defense holding Real Madrid off the scoreboard?
Maybe in the sense of like a best defense is a good offense, and just controlling the ball and not really having to take a defensive shape for a large part of the match, and just constantly putting pressure on Real Madrid and making them defend as opposed to having to defend themselves.
Well, they were doing that. They were doing that for much of the game yesterday. PSG had a whole lot of control and had Real Madrid pressed back for large swaths of the game. The problem is, or depending on what side you're on, Zidane, Real Madrid's coach, countered that in the last 10 minutes, where I think he brought on Lucas Vazquez and Marco Asensio, took off his Casemiro, who's kind of the security blanket in the midfield, and that's when Real Madrid just opened PSG up twice. A lot of speed, a lot of energy, and yeah, if Zidane was under pressure or any doubts about his coaching ability or adjustments, he made a big statement there yesterday, because those last two goals, if you watch the first 80 minutes, you didn't see Real Madrid scoring twice when the game was 1-1.
Yeah. And not to linger on Champions League too long, because we do have a couple other things we want to talk about, but we were talking about the quality of what PSG has to face domestically, and I'm just thinking, like, when the other major clubs around Europe, even you think of Juventus, within Serie A, there's some really good teams challenging them, and Bayern Munich dealing with the Bundesliga competition. Obviously, Real Madrid's in fourth in La Liga. It's just, I think it really forces them to stay sharp just throughout the season. And when you don't play a Champions League match for 2 months.
Yeah, there's a little bit more urgency in Real Madrid, urgency to improve, and where PSG has, there's more room for complacency. But the problem is that it's only February 15th. If PSG goes out on March 6th, that's going to make the last 2 months of their season just
like is irrelevant.
Yeah, almost, right. I mean, they'll have the league wrapped up by probably end of March at the latest. So yeah, it's I know the leadership at PSG won't like that, having the last few months, spending so much money on Neymar, and then having the last March, April, May, last 3 months of the season being irrelevant, for lack of a better word.
Well, the second leg of the first, I guess, round of 16 matches, those take place on March 6th and 7th.
Right.
And then the other 4 matches that will take place, those first legs are next week, and we'll talk about those next week as well.
Yeah.
But moving on to some big news in U.S. soccer, there's a new president. It happened. We heard about this. We heard there was something going on, some election that was going to take place. The 8 candidates finally whittled down to 1. Carlos Cordeiro wins the election. For those of you that don't know much about Carlos Cordeiro, he's been vice president of U.S. soccer under Sunil Gulati, was sort of known as Sunil's right-hand man.
Right, but that's been since 2016 was when he ran for vice president. Before that, he was brought in as an independent director, for U.S. soccer, where maybe he went through great lengths to paint himself as not as much of an insider as many thought he was.
Right. He's not as establishment as it would seem a vice president would be.
Right, right. And it's only been in the last, 18 months that he's been on the inside. Before that, he was more of an outside oversight function, and that was from 2007 to 2016.
Right. And he made a point of not wanting to be really known as the right-hand man to Gulati, and he actually announced that he was running for president before Sunil Gulati announced that he wasn't going to run for president.
Right.
So that is kind of an indication enough that while he was, or maybe if you want to believe that there is change coming to U.S. soccer, this guy could be a representative of that change.
Yeah.
And maybe in a way that's not Eric Winalda trying to get in there and blow everything up. It's like he understands what can change and what has to stay in place and what is working and what isn't working. Mm-hmm. Just like any person that maybe works at a company and sees the problems that take place, and if they were to, he can make the changes that are necessary. At least I want to believe that as a fan of U.S. soccer. But nobody really knew much about Carlos Cordeiro coming into it. He didn't do much media. He did a couple podcasts, and that was pretty much it.
Like one or two.
Yeah, I think it might have just been one.
Right.
But I think that the main thing is he kind of knew how to win this specific election.
Sure.
And it was for U.S. Soccer president, and I think people maybe just naturally kind of compared it to a presidential election. It wasn't really like that. It was more like passing something in the Senate, like passing a bill. It was there's a lot of, you have to talk to the right people. You have to get the right committees and groups on your side.
Build a coalition.
Yeah.
It's real politics. I'm glad this election is over because I think it was an S-storm. Can I curse on the podcast? I can't curse on it.
I think we know what you meant.
Yeah, it was a bit of a, I found a lot of it farcical, and, much of it was just hysterics and a lot of playing to the crowd, a lot of, building a popularity contest on soccer Twitter or, among casual sports fans. And that's not what it was about. I didn't hear a lot of those who commented on it didn't seem like they quite grasped what the job was, what the problems were, what the issues were. So I think this is a little bit more, Cordeiro's win. I guess I could say I'm happy about it because he's definitely a serious guy who's going to take a serious approach to this rather than, somebody coming in and just putting a flamethrower to an organization that probably doesn't need to be burnt down from the ground up.
You talk about things that he's actually going to, or he knows what he needs to do.
Yeah.
The big thing that he's talking about is increasing the revenue to compete with major footballing countries.
Yes.
So that's England, that's Germany, that's France, etc. Now, when people hear that, increasing revenue, maybe they roll their eyes again because they're just concerned about the business side, they're not concerned about the soccer. It's no, they're tied in with each other.
Sure.
And when Cordeiro wants to increase the revenue, it's so that he can compete and that U.S. soccer can compete with development of players all the way down to the youth levels and ages 7 to 12, all the way down back that far to be able to fund that development, which will then turn into good development and good players at the national team level.
Yes.
So I think that is the focus of increasing the revenue. It's not so that, the executives at U.S. Soccer can have more money.
Private jets and things like that.
I do genuinely believe that the people at the highest level in U.S. Soccer really aren't concerned with that sort of thing, at least not the majority of them. So
it's not just increasing revenue. I mean, what he talked about was increasing revenue so that you can put that money to bolster the grassroots. So he made a point saying to get an A license in the United States costs about $5,000. In Germany, you can get their top license for around $600 euros because the German Federation is subsidizing coaching education. So he's really trying to do that as well. If you drive the cost of good coaching down, you'll have more good coaches, which will in
Right.
turn produce more good players, which will in turn produce better teams,
Right.
better clubs, better national teams. So yeah, makes perfect sense.
And I think it's something that definitely needs to be changed, especially like people are talking about youth development and people aren't talking about like coaching as much as I think they should.
Yeah.
There is a serious lack of coaches.
Yeah.
And it is so difficult. Somebody maybe say in their early to mid 20s that wants to become a soccer coach, maybe played college soccer and now his career is over, wasn't able to play professionally, and is trying to get that going. I mean, you tell me, like, where do you go? Where do you start? Do you go down to like the YMCA and start coaching a YMCA league? Like, it's not like a clear branch of how you climb. There's no ladder, and it's very difficult. And you try and catch on with a high school
there
team.
is a ladder, and there are ways of developing as a coach within the U.S. soccer system. But I think you hit the nail on the head. You're saying a guy is or a woman is, their career ends. They're in their young 20s,
Yeah.
and how do you come up with $5,000
Right.
to start your coaching?
Like, you're like coaching
education
on the side, like
or
you have to have another job,
Right, it's not your full-time job.
Yeah.
Where does the money come from? It's one thing to charge $1,000 for for the best license available, but $5,000 when you're 24 years old.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about the coaching. Speaking of coaching, USA Soccer needs a new coach for the men's national team.
Yes.
Another good thing about Cordeiro is that he has made it clear that he's going to separate himself from the on the field operations. And basically the extent of his hands being in on field play is going to be his selection, along with I guess the board of directors of US Soccer, the selection of a general manager, not just for US Soccer, but for the men's national team, and then another general manager for the women's national team, which I think is also a great idea. And then that person and those people will be responsible and will be the ones held responsible for the ultimate performance of the national team.
Right. Letting the soccer experts
Right.
be in charge of the soccer.
Because Carlos Cordeiro doesn't really know enough about how to the best soccer.
Right. And
So-
did Sunil Gulati?
Probably not.
Probably not. But he was in charge of the hiring, the firing, the contract negotiations. He was in the nuts and bolts of with the national team. And I think there was if you look at where the U.S. went between 2006 and 2018, there's definitely a plateau that they hit. And I would probably say around 2010, they've been kind of performing at the same level before taking a sharp dip in 2017.
Yeah. And it's pretty clear that they won't hire a coach until they hire the GM, or the GM is going to hire the coach. Guessing that won't come until after the World Cup.
I don't see a coach coming in until after the World Cup. When,
Yeah.
they'll be looking to see who's out there, who's available. There'll be a larger pool of potential candidates in July and August than there will be in March or April.
And so I would also say this to sort of people that are going to be on Carlos Cordeiro's case about maybe what's he doing in the first 100 days? Don't really do that either, because maybe after the World Cup and we make the hire for whoever's going to be the head coach of the men's national team, that's when you can start being critical again about how this new regime is doing.
Yeah.
That's when there will actually be something to talk about, and we can see some sort of direction that they're taking.
Right.
But the one other thing is that Carlos Cordeiro is of Latino descent. We just lost Jonathan Gonzalez to Mexico. There is ongoing problems with connecting to minority communities and trying to get players beyond just playing soccer and into actual programs of development and capturing talent of the full United States population and not just, part of the population.
Right. I think Cordeiro himself estimated that 25% of players, certainly on the men's side, 25% are not being scouted. They're being completely left out of the system.
Yeah.
Which is basically trying to, take on the world with one hand tied behind your back.
Yeah.
And he He's of a Colombian background, Colombian and Portuguese, but born in India.
Yeah.
And then moved to the United States when he was 15 and has been here ever since.
So I think he hasn't really made any sort of point of talking about his heritage.
No.
I don't think he really thinks it matters, but I think he is very aware that that's a challenge that it is U.S. soccer's responsibility to take on and basically defeat and open up from that 25% of potential U.S. soccer players and bring it as close to 100% as possible. I think even to get to 50% is a good initial goal, and then go on from there. But I think that sort of also ties into the increasing revenue and being able to put money in to develop and get coaches in every area and scouts in every area to find the talent that's out there. And it all ties in together. And I think that that's something that Cordeiro, at least big picture-wise, seems to have in his head, that everything is going to tie in together. And if his vision, comes through, it could be, I think, a really big improvement.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't play up his heritage, but I think we can, because it's an important signal.
Yeah.
Having the head of your federation, he might not be his story probably isn't the American Latino story, given his upbringing in another country, but others that are looking up, and let's say they're on the outside looking in, seeing that you have a guy that is his name is Carlos.
Right.
I think that says something to those who are on the outside, or maybe felt disenfranchised or left out. And he doesn't have to play that up. I think it's really a matter of...
Speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, oh, he's got a Colombian mother, Portuguese father. Like, Portugal is European, and he was from India. So it's like, you kind of look at it and it's like he's from everywhere.
Yeah, man of the world.
A man of the world, and sort of in that sense as like American as it gets, in a way.
Yeah.
Which is, I think can only be positive. So I guess at the end of the day, and I said this last week, don't get too excited or too upset about who gets elected. In an odd way, I think I'm too excited.
Well, yeah, I mean...
So I still want to wait and be patient, see where it all goes.
The only one I was really going for was Hope Solo, and that was strictly for the clicks.
For the written content.
For the clicks, yeah. Because...
fair, very fair.
If she came out and said this or that, it would have made news.
Yeah.
She has a level of crossover appeal that I don't think anybody else in or around U.S. soccer has. But did I see her as a serious quote-unquote candidate? No, not really.
All right, well, this is finally over. We can get back to sort of talking about U.S. soccer on the field. They've got significant friendlies coming up in the summer, World Cup warm-ups for other countries, but those will be interesting to watch. But you've got a final word. You've got something about Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Finally.
I don't know what this is going to be.
Good.
I'm excited.
All right, big reveal. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, according to the Daily Mail late last night, him and his family have been over to California scouting houses in Beverly Hills.
Ooh, Beverly Hills is a nice area.
Beverly Hills is a nice area.
It's also really close to...
So I hear.
Two potential MLS teams he could join.
Yes, so... Zlatan is house hunting.
Interesting.
In L.A.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? Is he joining a team?
Well, yeah.
Thing is, he could just want to move to L.A.
Could be.
That'd be understandable.
Yeah, but, there's moving to L.A. as Zlatan, and then there's moving to L.A. to play as Zlatan.
Which is what Zlatan would probably do.
Well, I think that would make a little bigger splash than just Zlatan moving to L.A., even though he's, a legend on his own. Him arriving as a player will make, that's worldwide news versus him being just retiring in LA and doing whatever he wants post soccer.
Right.
So what do I make of it? He's not going to play for the Revolution. I'll tell you that much.
Please come to MLS, Zlatan. Give us 2 years of brilliance.
Yeah, and he's been effectively on the shelf for the better part of a year. And he can't really get into Manchester United's into their squad for the big games. So, yeah, I think Zlatan either within the next month or in July comes to Major League Soccer and joins the Los Angeles Galaxy, not LAFC.
Either one's fine with me.
Yeah, I think LAFC is going about building their team in a way that doesn't fit Zlatan's sudden arrival, whereas the Galaxy, they've been known to just bring stars in and roll them out onto the field. That's a little bit more their style.
Yeah. All right, well, I guess we'll keep an eye on that as well. Thanks for joining us. If you want to keep following along with the podcast, go to nesn.com/podcast. You can find us there on that page. Also find us on iTunes, search NESN, and you will see our podcast channel there. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back again next week.